It's what. Okay, now it's 10:01. We call the meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order. Madam the Chair, we have a quorum. Madam the Clerk, we have a quorum.
Yes, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Each member is acknowledging that they are attending the meeting via Zoom and that they are located in Wayne County, Michigan, unless otherwise stated when I call your name. Commissioner Varga,
I am here from Meredith in Clare County.
Commissioner Palomera,
Here.
Commissioner Baker McCormick,
Here.
Commissioner Dobb, Commissioner Baydoun,
Here.
Commissioner Anderson,
Present.
Chair Hattis.
Present.
We have a quorum present.
Thank you. Next item.
B, Chair's remarks.
Well, I have none except I just want to mention positive thing in the Economic Development Committee is the infrastructure money. I hope gonna give all the commissioner their wish for their district. With that, next item.
C, approval of the October 12th, 2021 meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Support.
Motion been made and supported. Any discussion on the October 12th, 2021 meeting minute? Hearing none, all those who agree signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose, motion carried. Next item, we have 1 and 2 and 3 receive and file, and we have, can we take the addenda with it?
Yeah, for the vacuum.
Okay, and 1, 2, and 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9, those items for receive and file.
I will move for approval to receive and file.
Support.
Motion been made and supported. Any discussion on any of the item 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, and 3? Hearing none, all those who agree signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose? Motion carried. Okay, and now next item.
Item 4, a workforce development plan presentation by the Economic Development Department.
Okay, thank you. We have with us Wafa Denero, the Director of the Economic Development, and Wafa, take it from there.
Thank you, Chair. Can we share screen? Do we have the ability to share screen?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Thank you. So we have Wafa Denaro, Wayne County Economic Development. We have engaged Guidehouse to assist us with workforce development. So historically, Wayne County has not been involved in workforce development as generally speaking. We have all of the tools available through different organizations, through different community colleges, but Wayne County has not done a whole lot with workforce development. In an effort to become more data-driven, in an effort to become more involved, we've engaged Guidehouse to put together a workforce development strategy and put together some proposals. We know there's a lot of gaps in workforce development. We've been hearing it from really all of the stakeholders that there's a lot of gaps, and we really wanted to pinpoint what those gaps are and start to talk about how to fill those gaps and how to be able to solve for some of these bigger problems. I'm gonna let the Guidehouse team introduce themselves. Sean Fernando is kind of the project lead here. Sean, I'll let you take it from here. I think you're the first one speaking.
Yep. Thank you, Wafa. I appreciate that. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Sean Fernando. I'm a Good morning. My name is Sean Fernando. I'm a director with Guidehouse. I'm currently based in Los Angeles. As Wafaa mentioned, we'd like to take this opportunity to kind of highlight to you the work that has been done so far on this initiative, on the economic and workforce development strategy, and put in front of you some of the kind of early bird drafts for consideration in terms of where we are coalescing around what the strategy and framework and the set of priorities looks like. As Wafaa has mentioned, this is important because it's important for the county to have a kind of coherent playbook and the rhyme and reason for why the county chooses to support certain economic and workforce development initiatives that are going to be responsive to the trends that we're seeing with automation, with e-commerce, with obviously the COVID disruption. And so the county has a forward-looking approach to preempt some of those trends and make sure that it's putting in place the tools that are necessary for its workforce to thrive in a 21st century economy. In terms of our team members, I'm just going to acknowledge a few of them who are on the line. So I'm supported by Christy Thronson, who's the project manager for this work, Jamie Bahura, who's based in the Detroit area, who's one of our senior consultants, Mary Najarian and Annie Yang. So it's been real team efforts with the Guidehouse team integrated with Wafaa's team and in order to bring this to you. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to my colleague, Jamie, who will walk you through our agenda.
Great. Thank you, Sean. So for our agenda today, as mentioned, we would like to walk through what our team has been working on with EDD for the past few months. I'll begin by giving an introduction to the project, an overview of what our aims are and what we've been going through. And then I'll pass it to our team members, after which we will go through some of the component parts with you, the advisory board purpose and composition, highlights of some of the work completed to date. And after this, we will go through an overview of our strategic framework, so an introduction of what the strategic framework is and where we are to date with that. And we'll be joined by Kamal Al-Sawafi from EDD to give that as well. After this, we'll outline our next steps and spend some time with you all to go through some question and answers as well. All right, so if that sounds good, we'll jump into the introduction, but I can pause here if anyone has any questions. All right, great. So jumping into overview of what the ARPA Economic and Workforce Development Strategy project is, over the past few years, we've seen a number of factors influencing our economy, things like, the automotive sector transformation, evolving consumer behaviors, technology disruption, but quite largely, obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic has really exposed some of the fault lines in Wayne County's economy. Key sectors have declined, jobs have been lost, and minority-owned businesses have been really hardest hit. So this led to the realization that Wayne County does require a comprehensive economic strategy that not only expedites the current road to recovery, but really also emphasizes the importance of longer-term sustainability. To help you get a flavor for the strategy, we've included here a selection of questions that we hope to address, including questions regarding, the county's, focus area, historical inequities, sector and occupational priorities, and I think really importantly, opportunities to partner with key stakeholders, because to ensure that the strategy is really sustainable, it's really key to engage these key stakeholders throughout the region and make sure that they're on board with the strategy and working, with Wayne County to further it as well. So I can pause here for any questions on the overview before we go into some of the detail around the project.
Any question for Jamie? I think you're doing a good job so far. Go ahead.
Thank you. All right, so we can move to the next slide. So at the conclusion of this process, we plan to have a few key deliverables. An economic and workforce development strategy, itself, whose component parts can be seen within that top box there. So we plan to have recommendations for how the county can work with its business, community, academic, and government partners to recover and maintain economic vitality. So that would be within that ecosystem strategy. We're working on, agreed upon recommendations for recovery tactics and actions, as well as a 24-month implementation roadmap, including program impact scorecards to serve as, blueprint for execution. And finally, materials for a public launch to really help build understanding and excitement among the community. Some other outputs that kind of came as a result of the development of that strategy itself and that we plan to have at the end are an assessment of the current state and the impact of COVID-19 on the county, an analysis of economic and workforce development trends and implications for Wayne, economic scenario scorecards for alternate economic development scenarios, which draw upon insights from the current state and future trends assessment, as well as bring in some stakeholder input there as well. And finally, a SWOT analysis and recommendations to really ascertain strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for the county. So we've got quite a bit planned to have at the end of this project to really ensure the success of the strategy and that it is sustainable for the future and implementation and beyond.
Can you explain a little bit on the point of the to help the public understand and know about what's available, what mean we use and how we getting the message across to the public?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of goes beyond just that bullet point on the public launch, but I think we're trying to build that into the strategy itself. So ensuring that the initiatives and the programs that we're funding really are able to push public engagement of these different workforce and economic development programs. So in our programs, which we'll talk about in a bit, you'll see that there's quite a bit around public engagement and trying to build in centers and people to engage with the communities to let them know what is available to them in terms of workforce development, things like training or wraparound services or what have you. So we've kept the public in mind, definitely. And I'll pause here, Sean, if you have anything to add.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Go ahead, Sean.
Well, I was going to say, Commissioner, that one of the concepts that's really important that we'd like to communicate on this slide is this word, this phrase, ecosystem strategy. And the reason we've defined it as such is because it recognizes that economic and workforce development requires the public, private, and social sectors to work in a coordinated fashion. Unfortunately, the county can't just wave a magic wand and create a workforce that is ready for tomorrow. It requires working with the school districts, with the community colleges, with the private sector as well. And so when we're developing the strategy, we want to use public engagement to not just solicit input into the strategy itself, but empower the individuals and the stakeholders who are within the Wayne County kind of economy to take part of that strategy and run with it. So help dovetail with their own workforce and economic development program so that the role of the county is more like a convener and kind of orchestrator of this very complex ecosystem. So that's kind of why we've weaved in public, the kind of public communications into this and very much focused on the ecosystem approach in developing the strategy.
Excellent. I agree. As the Michigan workforce have so many communication with the school and the community college, and the county could benefit and speed the process with that. So I'm really seeing you going in the right direction by working with the Michigan workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks, John. So if we have no other questions on some of our expected outputs, we can jump over to the next slide to give an overview of the strategy development process itself. I understand there are quite a lot of words on the slide, but we can focus on the top chevrons, which provide a summary of what's included in the table below. So the engagement itself is comprised of 4 key phases, each with its own set of objectives, actions, and levels of stakeholder engagement. So our first phase began with an analysis of the current state and future trends by evaluating key economic development policies, labor statistics, as well as future trends. So that really set the stage and the foundation for the rest of the strategy to take hold. The second phase focuses on the development of economic scenarios and that SWOT analysis I was talking about earlier. So using insights from the first phase, the team developed 3 to 5 economic development scenarios, which we engaged with some of our key stakeholders who comprise the advisory board, which we'll talk about in a bit. to evaluate the impact of those scenarios. As I mentioned, that process was developed, with input from stakeholders to really ensure cohesion and alignment. And our third phase, which is where we currently are, we are currently drafting and iterating on the economic and workforce development strategy, so that document itself, by developing a strategic framework and recommending specific programs, policies, and partnerships that support economic and workforce development. Again, stakeholders will be involved throughout this process to help iterate on the strategic framework. And that is part of why we're here today, to help iterate with key stakeholders within the EDC. Moving forward, our final step will revolve around the creation of an implementation roadmap and the strategy launch itself. So actually going through and developing that 24-month implementation schedule of policies and programs in conjunction with those impact scorecards to detail the expected outcomes and action item owners as well. So I know there is a lot here, but you can see our top 4 phases, some of those objectives and activities laid out. But I think, as Sean mentioned, one of the key parts of the strategy is that bottom box, which is stakeholder engagement. We've really tried to include key stakeholders within the region throughout each step. And we think it's really key to ensure that the strategy is sustainable moving forward, to have the buy-in of the key stakeholders, to have their input in the development of the strategy as well. And I can pause here.
Any question for Jamie? Hearing none, go ahead, continue then.
All right, great. So I'm actually going to pass it to my team member, Christy, to walk us through the advisory board purpose and composition, as well as our work completed to date.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you so much, commissioners, for allowing us to present for you here today. So Annie, if we could just go to the next slide, I'll provide an overview of the advisory board, which Jamie was alluding to in the approach. So at the outset of our strategy development process, we assembled an advisory board to help inform and eventually support the implementation of the economic and workforce development strategy. So the advisory board is comprised of leaders across the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, including Chair Bell, who's representing the County Commission, representatives from philanthropic organizations such as the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. We have members of the business community such as Bedrock, Ford, and DTE Energy. We also have some service providers like Focus Hope and the Arab Community Center for Economic and Social Services. And finally, we have members of the education community, including Wayne County's community colleges and also the Wayne Regional Educational Service Agency. So the advisory board was really formed because we recognize that there's a lot of really great work being done in the economic and workforce development space within the region. And we were seeking to tap into that experience and that expertise and coordinate the county's efforts with existing initiatives. And to date, we've held 5 different workshops with the full advisory board to develop and refine economic development scenarios, envision the future of economic and workforce development in the county, and start to brainstorm goals and key performance indicators for the strategy. We also met individually with all of the members of the advisory board to spend a little bit of time understanding workforce development challenges that they're seeing in the county and identify some potential investment and opportunities to help solve those challenges. So we'll continue to hold group workshops and individual meetings with members of the advisory board as we iterate on and finalize the strategy. But just a few key themes that have come out of advisory board engagement so far. The first and probably the most frequent piece of feedback that we've heard is that there's really a need for collaboration across organizations in the economic and workforce development ecosystem, such as the workforce development boards, social service providers, employers, community colleges, governments, and that sustainable collaboration across all of these entities will really help drive workforce development in the area. We also heard quite a bit that there, amongst some members of the workforce, there's an inability to meet basic needs such as housing, transportation, and childcare, which was exacerbated by the pandemic and is really acting as a major barrier to employment and finding and sustaining employment for some residents. So as an acknowledgement of that, you'll see in the strategy and the strategic framework some potential programs around wraparound services to overcome these barriers. But I'll pause here for any thoughts or questions on the advisory board.
Any question for Christy? Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondered how often the advisory board will be meeting and if those are going to be Zoomed.
Sure. So we meet approximately once per month to present our draft work products and get their feedback. They're typically held via Microsoft Teams. That's the platform that our firm uses. So we've been having those at about a cadence of once per month, and we'll continue to have those for the next few months. As we define our implementation roadmap, we'll define the cadence at which the advisory board will continue to meet.
The other point I have is I did notice that the access representative, I think, has changed. The president and CEO is no longer Hassan, I believe.
Yes, so we reached out to Access and just confirmed that Hassan is still the best point of contact for the time being, as they're kind of in a transitionary period. But we'll continue to stay in contact with them, and we'll identify a new representative as needed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other commissioner have any question? Go ahead. I can see the if the hand raise on the screen. Well, here and none. I think Christy, you did a good job. If there are no other question.
Great. In that case, I will move us forward to the next slide. So, Annie, if you could switch over here, perfect. So on this slide, we have a summary of the work that we've completed to date to help kind of bring you up to speed on the research, analysis, and conversations that will act as the foundation of the strategy. So in the top box, we have 3 work products that really helped us establish a fact base. The first on the far left is a current state assessment in which we analyzed the composition, strengths, and weaknesses of the county's current economy and workforce and identified the impacts of COVID-19. A few key findings from that report. We found that with only 1/3 of residents working in occupations that require a post-secondary degree, the county is primarily sustained by lower skilled jobs. And unfortunately, these lower skilled occupations often coincided with the industries which were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, such as hospitality and manufacturing. We also found that the county is losing a bit of its competitive advantage in its headline industry, transportation, manufacturing, and experiencing some employment loss in other kind of key industries like professional information and technical services. However, it's not all bad news. Other industries such as transportation, warehousing are growing more rapidly than regional and national averages, which is starting to create a local concentration that really capitalizes on the county's central location and strong transportation infrastructure. So the second work product that we have here is the policy analysis, where we're really mapping national, state, and regional economic and workforce development programs and targets to understand the policy context that the strategy will fit into. So in this analysis, we found that there is a fragmented group of state, regional, county, and city level stakeholders that each have different priorities and kind of spheres of influence that direct, control, and influence the economic and workforce development ecosystem within the county. However, there are some priorities that appear across many of these stakeholders, such as economic recovery, fiscal sustainability, community development and well-being, and equity and inclusion. So the last component of our fact base was a future trends assessment, where we identified trends that may impact economic and workforce development in the county in the next 5 to 10 years, so that we can really build a strategy that anticipates and prepares county residents for the economy of the future. And some of those key trends that we identified include next generation infrastructure, sustainable development, and a workforce that's becoming more mobile, digital, and adaptable. So after establishing our fact base, we worked with stakeholders to really identify challenges and priorities for the strategy. On the left-hand side, you can see that we worked with members of our advisory board to determine how investing in different industries and prioritizing different economic objectives, such as short-term recovery versus long-term growth, might impact to GDP and job growth in the county, and landed on a set of focus industries and later target clusters, which we'll talk a little bit more about in future slides. And then, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we also conducted those interviews with advisory board members and then other key stakeholders who are not represented on the advisory board to better understand the work that's already being done in this space and start to brainstorm potential workforce development initiatives. And then last but not least, we held workshops with members of the advisory board to coalesce around some values that should help guide the development and implementation of the strategy. And all of these products will be acting as inputs to the strategic framework, which my colleagues will provide an overview of on the future slides. But I see that we have some hands. I know that that was a lot of information, so happy to take questions now.
Okay, any question? Like I mentioned, I can't see the raise hand on my screen. If any commissioner have any question, just go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I will start. This is Commissioner Dobb. I'm just wondering if there is any of this information available online. Is there a dashboard or something for all these reports?
There isn't yet. Once we are done with the report, it will be all online.
Okay.
We can share this with you, but we're not ready to share it publicly. We're not ready to share it publicly just yet.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Would be the door be open, Wafa, as I mentioned, anytime we have some progress and some good news to report to the committee. We'll be glad to have you back with your team and give us the update on how things working, because it's very important, and especially in Wayne County. I know there's shortage of human resources, and we tackle it with the most important issue that the base and the foundation for economic development growth. Because if we don't have the people trained and the available resources, then we're going to lose some of them. And I hope your team would, you addressing the important issue with the workforce, and you connect a lot of dots with it, because it's not only the job and the training, it's the transportation, it's the housing, it's all come together to make sure we have a successful effort. So we appreciate it if you keep us informed, and you're welcome anytime. This committee meet every other week, so we'll be glad to hear from you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Yes.
Just wanted to clarify if any of this data that you're collecting is broken down into districts or areas of the county?
Well, the Economic Development Department covered the whole Wayne County, but the workforce connection, it have two different districts. It have the District of Detroit because of the size of the city, and we have other district like the Southeast Michigan District 10, that it's the main office in Taylor. They have an office in Livonia. They have an office in Dearborn with Access. They have many other offices. So the economic development work with all of them, I think, to cover Wayne County.
Right. The question is the information that is being presented today, as far as the efforts in various districts, is it broken down into areas of concentration?
So most of the analysis was done at the county level because for the most part, the data is available at the county level. It doesn't break down beyond that. Where it was possible, we broke it down into the qualified census tracts, In some cases, we broke it down into individual communities within the county. For most of these analyses, they were done at the county level. And we're happy, as Wafa mentioned, to share drafts of these documents if you'd like to take a closer look. We just ask that we keep these close hold until we're ready to go public with the final report.
Thank you.
Any other question? Hearing none. Christy, may I continue?
Well, thank you all for the questions. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Sean, who will start to walk us through the strategic framework.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Christy, as well. So Christy is kind of, and Jamie have done a great job in kind of talking you through some of the activities, the tasks, and the inputs that have gone into this work. And as you can see, it's pretty complex. There are lots of moving parts. There's data, there's workshops, there's stakeholder engagement, there's research into policies, etc. So all of those need to be fused together. And I was particularly appreciative of the chair's remarks regarding what economic development looks like and what it needs to look like for the county, which is much more holistic definition of economies than we've otherwise had. So, previously the 20th century model of economic development is, let's build something and jobs will come. And that is no longer the case. The 21st century model of economic development is a competition for talent, to both attract talent, but also to grow it and nurture it and harness it within our own kind of boundaries. And so, what this really implies is this broader, more holistic definition of economic and workforce development, the kind of objectives, the outcomes, and the inputs that go into that. And so through this work, we'll be developing, a strategy that fuses all those elements together and structures that in such a way that is easy to understand and is focused on the priorities that are right for Wayne County. And at the heart of that strategy is something that we call this strategic framework. And so the way to think of this is, this is the one mental model of that captures and represents how the strategy is intended to work. So if you can imagine, when we deliver our report to you, this is something that you might potentially print out and stick on the wall in the office, that you have that quick reference to understand, this is what the county's approach to economic and workforce development is. So I'll just spend a couple of minutes talking through the structure of this, and then I'm going to pass it to Kamal in a second. But the framework is comprised of these layers. If you look on the left-hand side, the vision, mission, goals, the foundation initiatives, and then the target clusters under each of that. And so the way to read it is kind of top down. The first is the vision, which is this description of what the Wayne County's ideal economy and workforce looks like in 2030. So it's a vision of aspiration. It's like, where do we want to be? Who do we want to be, and kind of what do we want to be able to say as headline statement regarding the county's economy. Then we dissect and break that down into the missions that we need to embark on as a county to get there. And remember my kind of earlier point that this is an ecosystem-wide strategy. So it's going to be a set of missions that in some ways the county can lead, but also that the county needs to collaborate with the private and social sectors on. And so these missions summarize the purpose and intentions of this ecosystem as a whole. We then break that down into goals, which are more kind of tangible objectives, the kinds of things that you'd be able to recognize, the things that, essentially, that we'll start to hold ourselves to account, but also be more tangible in terms of the results that are quantified that'll help the ecosystem achieve its vision. And then supporting that is this kind of basket of foundation initiatives where the team has kind of done the work to evaluate what are the initiatives that are currently underway in Wayne County, both run by the county, but also championed and run by stakeholders. What kind of tweaks would that require, that composition of foundational initiatives require to tweak them in the direction towards our vision? And what can we also learn from best practice elsewhere in the country? So these are the kinds of initiatives that we've kind of mentioned over the past few minutes, such as wraparound services and site selection assistance, etc. And so these foundation initiatives really kind of allow these goals to be met. And then finally, the target clusters, and again, Kamal will go into this in a moment, is basically, we've conducted analysis to evaluate what are the sectors and the industries and the clusters that are really going to drive Wayne County's economy forwards in the future. So, in the not so recent past, it was transportation manufacturing. Wayne County, this part of the US, was a global manufacturing hub for the automotive sector. Those trends are changing with electrification and automation and kind of the way that people live and work with cities and how they get around. And so we've been taking a look at, given the trends of the future, what are the clusters that Wayne County may focus on? How do we kind of tap into this, intellectual capital and kind of knowledge-driven based economy around, information, technology, but also how do we support, the care economy? What role does that play for our aging workforce? How do we support and put into place the types of programs and certifications that are going to be necessary to see these clusters succeed? And then finally, at the bottom is this kind of cross-cutting, this arrow, double-ended arrow, which basically outlines the fundamental principles of equity and collaboration that underpin and enable this entire framework. Any questions on the structure of that before I pass it over to Kamal?
Any question for Sean? Hearing none, I think you did a good job. Thank you. Go ahead.
Great. Over to you, Kamal.
Thank you, Sean. Good morning, everyone. Kamal Sawafi here, Business Development Manager for Wayne County in the Economic Development Department. To begin our review of the strategic framework, we'll review the vision, mission, and goals as they articulate the overall county strategic direction related to economic and workforce development. We have drafted out the vision, mission, and goals while keeping in mind our key values of equity and collaboration. We developed these components. Are we ready for the slides? Another loading a little bit. We developed these components using input from the advisory board as well as findings from our research and analysis. Our vision statement aligns with the county's mission with a slight change to focus on economic and workforce development. We see it as a vision where Wayne County is globally recognized as a top place to live, work, and grow a business. We have categorized the rest of the strategic framework into 3 pillars: economy, workforce, and community and culture. Through workforce development, though that workforce development is a centerpiece of the strategy, we felt that it was important to include economic and community development because the 3 disciplines are interconnected. We find that organizing into 3 pillars allowed us to better articulate what we have listed and our purpose and intentions in each of these areas. Under each mission, we have listed out our draft goals. Our economic mission is to catalyze economic recovery and growth by tapping into the emerging trends and advancing economic equity. Our workforce mission is to equip all residents with the skills, credentials, and support needed to obtain and sustain high quality employment. Our community and culture mission is to create vibrant, accessible neighborhoods that contribute to a thriving local economy and improve quality of life. Now we have identified 3 economy goals, which are supporting recovery industries disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, catalyze target industry cluster growth, and retain, attract, and grow small businesses and minority and women-owned businesses and enterprises. Our 3 workforce goals are: increase the number of adults with a skills certificate or post-secondary degree, create employment pathways to key industries and occupations for underrepresented workers, and remove barriers to employment. And finally, our community and culture goals are: improve attainability of stable housing for members of the workforce, increase access to reliable transportation, and cultivate lively commercial and culture hubs that reflect the regional identity. Our values are shared beliefs that guide strategic planning and decision-making, For this strategic plan, we identified equity and collaboration as the key values in our workshop with the advisory board. I'll pause here for questions or comments on the vision, mission, goals, and values. All right, if there's no questions.
Well, you know, it's excellent presentation, and it have too many key players. Do you expect any difficulty between the player to communicate and guarantee the success of the effort we doing here?
So far, our advisory board have been synced and players have been working well together. And a lot of these were based off feedback that we received from the players in the advisory board. Any of my colleagues want to add anything?
Chairman, just we do, I mean, with everything, people are not always willing to give up their territory. So we do expect some resistance, but I think everybody understands that there's a bigger issue and that we all need to come to the table and talk through these goals and to be able to get the region to a better place. So I think with everything, of course, there's going to be some obstacles, but I think everybody that's on the board is committed to working through them and looking at the bigger picture.
Excellent. That's why I ask this question, because I would like to see the commissioner, the 15 commissioner, well aware of what's going on, where the resistance is, where the success and cooperation, collaboration coming from. So in some way and somehow we need to know those things to guarantee the success of what you're doing.
I mean, all the players that we have here, they understand, like Wafa said, there is a gap, and they see the county as that centerpiece that can close those gaps. So we're all working to achieve the same goal.
Thank you. Any other question from the commissioner? Seeing none. Next.
Next slide, please. All right. After identifying our vision, mission, and goals, we identified a short list of key foundational initiatives based on research and stakeholder input. Foundational initiatives are key aspects of the strategy. They are the cross-cutting programs in which we'll direct funds to contribute to the achievements of one or more of our goals, which will in turn help the ecosystem achieve its vision. Next slide, please. The current list of initiatives is still in draft form and has not yet been finalized. The initiatives you see with the stars indicate programs that were suggested by other Wayne County departments in the ARPA Commission presentation, but we included them because they align with our mission and contribute to the achievement of the goals. We have 3 economy-focused initiatives, 6 workforce initiatives, and 6 community and culture initiatives, and 2 cross-cutting initiatives. As a note, many of the proposed initiatives are high level, and we plan to build out details of the programs such as target population, target certifications, or focus industries after we finalize our list of foundational initiatives. Our economy-centered initiatives include site readiness, a small business recovery fund, and a business navigator program. 2 cross-cutting initiatives which span economy and workforce are business and employment centers, and a collaborative economic and workforce development board. Our workforce-centered initiatives include a subsidized employment program, wraparound service grants, retraining and retooling funds, and a returning citizens assistance program, a career navigator program, and a Wayne County workforce development team. Now, the community and culture initiatives on the far right include affordable housing, smart transportation and infrastructure investments, rental assistance program, regional transit planning, and Main Street program, as well as a workforce housing fund. Now, each program that I just listed here is still at the early stages of development. The specifics of each have yet to be designed, But here are a few that we think will be impactful that I'll highlight. Like the Site Readiness Program, which is a program already proposed by the ADD for development, which provides investment in the sites to include infrastructure improvements and brownfield remediation investment in qualified census tract areas. Now, the Small Business Recovery Fund, which provides funding for small businesses that experienced negative impacts during the pandemic. And we heard from almost all stakeholders that key barriers to employment include lack of access to wraparound services. And the wraparound service grant will assist organizations who provide key services like childcare. Now, I'm happy to go over descriptions of any of the other initiatives if anyone would like to learn more about what we're aiming to achieve.
Any question for Kamal? Any commissioner? Again, use your voice. Let me hear you when I ask the question. Just one question on an important issue here, the transportation infrastructure investment. And we know the region and the dire need for regional transit. How you see the transportation system in the condition at the present time to meet the enhancement and the improvement of the job creation and putting people to work. Is the transportation system meet the requirement?
I can take that one. So we know that our current transit does not meet the requirements, and a lot of businesses have kind of stepped up to, have private buses that kind of get their employees around. We also are not sure that the political environment is there right now to be able to pass transit. It's something that we're looking at. I mean, regional transit is something that's incredibly important to this administration, and that, we've failed to pass a couple times already, but it's something that we're going to continue to look at. So transit it comes up over and over and over again in all of our conversations. And we know it's a problem. We know it's a barrier to recruiting talent to the region. And it's something we need to address. We don't know what the timing on it is going to be, though.
Thank you. Any other question? Seeing none. What's next?
Next slide, please. Now, finally, with the strategic framework, we have included a focus area around target clusters, key sectors of interest within the county. Through research and engagement with the advisory board, we identified key industries of focus. And because we're seeking to align with other regional strategies, we took our focus industries and compared them to cluster strategies that have been developed by regional and state level groups, such as the DRP and the MEDC. What we found is that our focus industries align most closely with the DRP, the Detroit Regional Partnership clusters, and therefore selected these as our area target clusters for the strategy. Their target clusters include mobility and automotive, logistics, research, engineering and design, digital technology, corporate and professional services, and smart manufacturing. We will develop mini mission statements to summarize the county's position in each of these clusters. We're also conducting research and analysis on the occupations, businesses, and policies that will support growth within these clusters so that we can develop strategies to attract and retain businesses in these industries and prepare the county residents to participate in these clusters. Now I'll hand it over to Christy, who will take us through the next steps.
Great. Thank you so much, Kamal. So on the next slide here, we have some next steps, which will essentially be finalizing the strategy, developing an implementation roadmap to assist with strategy execution, and creating materials to facilitate the public launch. So we're hoping to wrap this up within the next couple of months, at which time you'll hear from us again, I'm sure, with some of the final recommendations. So on the next slide, we have a number of just questions for discussion. If you have any other burning questions, we're happy to answer those now, but we've also kind of put these up on the screen to help facilitate a discussion and to talk through any feedback that you might have on the initial strategy. It looks like we have a hand here.
Commissioner Dobb.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This question just popped up in my mind, and I don't know if it was mentioned in one of the slides. There was a lot of information provided, but are you looking at childcare at all? I know that is a big barrier for a lot of parents, you know, getting jobs, getting to work, and I know that, you know, that's the state is trying to work on that, but I think it would be wonderful if the county was looking at that issue as well.
Yeah, so we are. I mean, we know that's a huge issue. It is, again, it's a part of the conversations that keep coming up. We do know the state is going to be providing funding for childcare, so we're kind of just waiting to see. We don't want to duplicate efforts, so we're kind of in a holding pattern right now to see what the state's program looks like, how much funding they're going to provide, and if the money is going to be like funneled through the county or if it's going to go directly to the childcare providers. So we're definitely looking at daycare. It's a part of our strategy, but what that's going to look like, I don't have a good answer for you yet.
Okay, and then two follow-up questions to that is, do you know exactly how those types of programs work, or if they're looking at reimagining how the funding would work? Is it just setting up free or low-cost childcare centers in certain areas?
It's likely going to be a mix of expansion of the GSRP program, of the eligibility, and the like how much money you make to qualify for that. And that's, you know, that's a free preschool program. If you meet the financial threshold, it's likely going to be an expansion of the requirements for the GSRP, and it's probably going to be like grants and subsidies to childcare providers. That's kind of what we're hearing. That's our understanding. I don't know if there's going to be any direct funding to individuals. I don't think there will be. It looks like it'll just be the expansion of GSRP and subsidies to childcare providers to be able to pay their employees more and grow their staff.
Okay, and then another thing that I'm trying to look at is daycare or childcare for workers who don't work 9 to 5 hours. You know, can someone get childcare in the evening or on weekends? I know those are pretty limited resources.
It is pretty limited, and there was a lot of in-home daycare centers that used to do that, and I mean, a big part of the problem is that they've closed. They closed because of the pandemic, and you know, we're hoping that the state incentivizes daycare centers to reopen that shuttered their doors and can provide those services again.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Wafa. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other question?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner McCormick.
Thank you. Wafa, at one time, the state was provided incentives for the entertainment industry. That was what we were really pushing for. And I'm not sure where the state is on that, but have we considered that industry?
As far as workforce development, when we've been looking at the entertainment industry and really the service industry, we know that that's been the hardest hit. And we know that in regards to workforce, it's going to be the most difficult for them to attract talent just because of the wages that they pay and because of
So
where
let me clarify what I meant by entertainment industry. I meant like film industry.
I don't know if they're going to bring back the film and the tax credits and stuff. I don't think they are right now. There's no discussion. That's not something that they're looking at
Right,
all.
but would that be something that we could look at? So, I think it's especially as we look at the Airtropolis area and just expanding on that industry alone, I think I didn't really see any indication that there was any thought into that industry, but I still believe that we should actually be looking at the film industry.
Yeah, unfortunately, Wayne County doesn't have jurisdiction over the tax incentives for that. That would have to come from the state. So it's not something we are looking at. I don't think the county would have a role in any kind of film industry incentives, but we can absolutely look at what other places are doing and look at some of their best practices to see if it's something we could do. At this point, it's not something we've considered.
Okay. Yeah, I think it could be something or should be something we can consider even if the state doesn't move on it. We just went to a conference that talked about how that has helped their community and their county thrive. So it's just something to consider.
Well, this issue, it's not that simple. The local municipality, when it comes to tax abatement, they most likely the decision maker, even though the state have influence, strong influence on how many jobs the industry bring in and stuff like that. But
Right.
that is totally sometime up to the municipality, because the municipality could make the issue or break the issue by them accepting or refusing tax abatement. And the county has to work between the state and municipality to offer their support wherever that it's benefit to all the state and the municipality and the county or not. But it's a complicated issue, but that doesn't mean we don't have to look into it. We will.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other question? I think we only 1 minute away from start taking time from cops, and I don't want to get in trouble with Commissioner Marecki, especially around the holiday season. So any other question? No question, Wafa?
I think we're good.
Good, done, all done?
Yeah, unless you guys have anything to add.
Okay, well, it's a good presentation, a lot of information. I appreciate all the effort you and your team put in it, and it looked like we heading in the right direction. And we wait till we hear more positive thing in the future in this committee from you. Thank you to all of you. The next item, Madam the Clerk.
F, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
I have none.
Public comments.
Will you unmute all the public online? You receive any email?
No emails and the lines have been unmuted.
Okay, anybody from the public like to comment on the economic development presentation or agenda? Anybody like to comment? It's twice. the third time and the final request, if anybody like to comment on the public, on the economic development agenda or presentation. Hearing none, next item.
Adjournment.
So move to adjourn.
Motion been and supported. All those who agree signify by saying aye.
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 Motion